Welcome to our virtual audience here on Bevy. We're so excited to bring this great panel to you today. I'm David Marica, the founder and CEO of Socialive.
I'm Derek Anderson, the co-founder and CEO of Bevy, and this is also happening via Socialive. So thank you, David, we're kind of bringing the two worlds together here. This is great.
And a great way to kick off the Bevy and Socialive partnership. So why we're here today. So today we have an amazing group of panelists who really know that transition from physical events to virtual events and what really matters in these events, which is content and community. So let's take the mystery out of those virtual events today and discuss that value with these amazing group of experts. So just a little bit of housekeeping. It's going to be a Q&A style with our folks here. We're going to go through at least hopefully 4 or 5 key themes that we hope will be actionable value for you as listeners today. But we really want your engagement. So we want your questions. We're certainly going to take the last 10 minutes of the session for Q&A, but we may have infused that in earlier if we have some on-point questions with the topic areas that we're going through. So please engage with us because we love to interact in this way. So without further ado, let's bring on our panelists. First off, I want to introduce Carmen Ingerman. Carmen Ingerman is a senior program manager on the New York Times events teams. She has worked at the New York Times since 2015, and I've had the pleasure of working with her. So welcome, Carmen.
Hi, so good to be here.
Next, we're excited to have Erica Kuhl, who's the founder and CEO of Erica Kuhl Consulting. Previously, Erica was the VP of Community at Salesforce for over a decade, where she ran a program with 3 million members, called Trailblazers, and help infuse community into the Salesforce ecosystem. She also co-hosts the podcast Before the Lock. We're very excited to have Erica here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Next up, we have coming in from Cloudera, Shelby Kahn, who works on strategy and governance for organic social channels, as well as blogs and employee advocacy. And, I've had the good fortune of also working with Shelby, and she is one of the great voices of social, community, and engagement out there in the ecosystem. So Shelby, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Andrea Tulsidas is in the developer community at OutSystems. She lives, which I love this, she lives by the golden rule of by the community and for the community, and is up for any challenge that building community brings, and has a vast amount of experience doing that at OutSystems. So Andrea, welcome to our panel. Thanks for being here.
Excited to be here.
All right, so let's get right into it, guys. So we're going to start with a first question, which is really around the transition from physical to virtual events. And I'd like to tee it off with Carmen here from the New York Times. So Carmen, when you kind of had, the pandemic hit in early March, and all of a sudden you're racing to think about this transition from virtual to physical events. You guys put on great content. How did your content strategy and storytelling approach change once that hit? And what have you learned through the process?
Yeah. So regardless of their format, all New York Times events are expressions of Times journalism. So whether they're in person or virtual, that is still kind of our core mission. So one of the biggest changes was really the story and what was happening. And so making sure that we were able to connect with our audiences and help them understand what was happening in the pandemic and the world outside them, and then also to help bring them joy while they were inside. So I think really like the actual content and the story of the events had to change, and then in order to help our audience with that, we created a series called Live at Home, and we executed 150 live at home events.
Wow.
Which included weekly calls with Andrew Ross Sorkin about business and policy and culture, a Living Well series with Tara Parker Pope and health experts on how to stay safe and fulfilled when you're at home, and NYT cooking happy hours, and some other fun events to keep your mind off of what was going on outside. So in addition to just like the expanded scale a really big change for us was the expanded audience. We were able to welcome guests from 115 different countries, and we had over 1.3 million guests that were joining us. So these virtual events offered a lot more access. And also we were able to open up to a much larger global audience and also global speakers. And we could reach speakers in all different countries and parts of the world in one event, which was really new and unique for us. So I think in terms of the actual content that was changing, it was the story that we were trying to tell with these events, and that was the biggest difference. But in terms of strategy and how to get there, I think one of the biggest changes was the way we engage with our audience. An audience engagement in a virtual event can start a lot further before the event actually begins. So whether that's soliciting questions in advance, we have generated tens of thousands of questions from our audience, which is incredible, and also soliciting user-generated content that we were pulling into the events themselves was a really interesting and unique change for us. So really quickly, a few examples of that. We hosted a modern love event celebrating our new Tiny Love Stories book and invited readers to write and submit their own modern love tiny love stories for a chance to have an actor read it during the show. We also invited readers to share their favorite theater memories and photos that we included as interstitials during an event in our offstage series.
So it's pretty amazing. Like, you really found a way to kind of create a new form of engagement, during this kind of pandemic. It kind of forced you in that direction. And Shelby, if I could turn it to you for a second now, coming from the B2B side of things, on Cloudera, like, how has your storytelling and content strategy approach changed?
Yeah, I would say it's really on the piece of the content strategy, right? If you look in the B2B space, we rely heavily on these large conferences. I would say from a social perspective, we've noticed well before COVID hit that our impact was reducing. We weren't seeing as much value from it, but we couldn't not be there. Our competitors were there, the perception of it, we had to be there, but we didn't necessarily want to be. So this kind of has given us the excuse to really stop those things and look at what we actually want to do. We already have a heavily involved virtual events team. We transitioned our physical events team, works hand in hand with virtual events now, because obviously it was all hands on deck to get everything virtual. We have talked about the collaboration it requires to build out a new strategy that we haven't had to do before. And it's not just an overarching strategy, it's for every single individual event we want to do, what's the best way to get it out there? What's the best way to engage with our audience? What's the best way to consume that content before, during, and after? It's a brainstorm across demand generation, physical events, virtual events, corporate comms, which is what I sit on, the audience expertise. So we've really had to change the way we work together to get to this point. And now we're going heavily into the more, we do a lot of ABM on our side, a lot of these more smaller events that are more specific and strategic to groups that can really drive the engagement we're looking for, as opposed to necessarily broad scale all the time.
I love it. So it's really starting to break down the silos within the marketing and communications department. We'll come back to that topic again if we have time, because I think it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'd love to know, Andrea, what, and just to the audience and people that are watching, like, please share your questions in the Q&A tab. We'd love to get some of those in here shortly. But Andrea, what formats and themes and topics are resonating with the virtual events and attendees that you're doing at OutSystems? Well, what's working?
Yeah, so we manage a developer community. So developers are normally a persona that really values candid conversations, open discussions with product teams, R&D teams. And so we were doing the typical meetup where we had 1 to 2 sessions dedicated to discussing the product. And what we've seen, this is nothing new, it's more of a cliche, but there's no one size fits all when it comes with events, right? There's no one specific thing that's going to work with all communities. So what we saw was an opportunity to really try out new things. So instead of just going for the typical webinar where a bunch of people just look at slides for 1 hour or 2 hours, like we were expecting to convert meetups, we opened everything. So we just insisted in people having as less slides as possible. We tried to pump up interaction and engagement. So inviting product managers, R&D engineers, and having people actually conversing and having open conversations with our community. And also creating breakout rooms, just giving them the space that reminded them of what it was to be in an event, right? You go to an event to meet new people, network with your peers, and discuss similar topics that you have of interest. And so we didn't want to lose that event aspect. So we just tried to make sure that we weren't complicating things and we were just opening the stage for everyone to participate. And also, I think that we didn't overthink it. I think that when we went online, everyone was just trying to up their game and doing more than whatever it was that other people were doing. And so we were doing up to 4 or 5 events a week. And that for us was a lot. We have 64 groups around the world. And so in 6 months, we did almost 50 events. And in the second half of the year, we did 8. And out of those 8, we had more than 2,000 people because we simplified and we thought of what our developers wanted. Exactly. And so we wanted to make it fun. So we had our organizers being like hosts of the event. We had people just like being accountable for getting people into the event and feeling engaged and feeling hyped and just having a good time at the end of the day.
I want to jump to Erica, to you in this, in answering this. When you were at Salesforce, you're doing 300 or to 500 events a month. Now you're sitting and seeing, dozens of companies and what they're doing and working with them on these different strategies.
Yeah.
What are you seeing across all of those different, kinds of people and programs?
Well, I think that there's a silver lining to all crisis situations, and I feel like this was like a very exciting time for community because we were there. We were already engaging this way. And so we could offer our guidance and support to the larger organization to say, hey, we've been doing this for a while. And it opened the eyes of the organization to the power of community really, really quickly. There's like, we can activate and execute fast on this. So it's been really fun to watch the clients that I'm working with and also watch Salesforce pivot fast. But one thing I think that I noticed that's really an exciting innovation is that not assuming in Andrea's spot that everybody knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing locally and engaging with their groups or engaging with these special interests, but bringing it virtual is not just something everybody has. So initially everybody just like threw it online and then they just tried to adapt and quickly realized that was not engagement. And so then it was like, what can we do to empower people in our organizations and people in our community to run really awesome events virtually? And that doesn't mean necessarily doing more of them. It just means doing them more effectively and giving them tools and resources. So investing in your leaders and investing in your community to make them amazing at running their own events. And that's a skill that they can bring on forever. It's a skill that they can use with their local community, but also like an incredible business opportunity for themselves to get a skill. So it ends up being like a perk you can provide. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Carmen, you talked about how you all did 150 events, I think, and could you tell us about how you maintain community after those were over?
Yeah, as Erica said, this is a very exciting time for community, and I think we had said 150 events with people from all over the world. So you're getting this new community that you're creating with the events, but then engaging that community after is important, as you said. So we are engaging with our community by promoting New York Times newsletters or relevant content. We're really doing that. Email seems to be the best way to get that content to people. And then also creating communities within our events group as after parties. We've hosted some events where we have an after party on another platform. So one example of that is we did a live announcement of the 10 best books of 2020. So this was a live reveal of the list with the book review team, and that event streamed on nytimes.com. And then afterwards, attendees could join journalists from the book review team in a Zoom to discuss the list some more and share some of the books that they loved and read, whether they made it to the list or not. And it was a really fun way to create that sense of community around the event as well.
Super interesting, because that's like exclusive content, right?
Hashtags and things.
Yeah,
exactly.
That idea of like content that's exclusive, or like it's a moment in time. So tying it to something that's really kind of important in that regards.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea, how about you? After you hosted these 2,000 people, what did you all do to keep them engaged?
Yeah, so our community events are led by the community. So we have a bunch of community leaders around the world that are representing us and scaling our community and being the face of OutSystems in their local cities. So what we do is a little bit of what Erica was talking about. We activate these leaders. We give them the resources that they need to really promote exactly what they're doing. And it just brings more force and more impact coming from them than coming from us. So what we've seen is that this word of mouth, this power of sharing these events that were happening or upcoming events has a lot more value coming from our community rather than us. So we invest a lot in making sure that our community is ready to promote and to communicate what we're doing. Another cool thing that we've done is we've seen the sessions as almost like educational material that we can leverage for our developers. So a lot of these sessions that are provided by SMEs and experts around the ecosystem really get leveraged as our guided path material, our training courses. So we're using these sessions, this knowledge that were shared by a bunch of experts around the world to really be consumed afterwards. And also we try to show consistency. So we plan ahead and we try to aim that everyone in the community knows when the next event is coming or what they can count on, or know exactly that in a specific month or on the second Thursday of each month, there will be an event. So we try to show consistency and we try to show that we're there for them.
Kind of episodic in nature, kind of recurring. Like I love this kind of transformation as organizations become their own media companies. Like the future of media is like it all is kind of coming in-house within the organizations. I remember talking to like Chase a few years ago, and that was a goal of theirs, right? And you're seeing it's just like that's what's happening, and I think this has accelerated that adoption. And also you can be more nimble in some ways. So I actually want to talk about how you measure success though in ROI, right? So Shelby, Cloudera is a very data-driven organization, right? Talk about how you've begun to measure success, say maybe the first phase, but now as you're kind of looking forward and realizing this is going to be an ongoing part of your world. How do you measure success of these types of events broadly with the marketing team?
Yeah, obviously depends on the event. So when we're looking at our virtual events and our webinar teams, that's, hosted by our great virtual events team. Those are often, we're looking at which target accounts come. We're very targeting who's coming. We're not looking for quantity, we're looking for quality, right? When we have our awareness events, which are the ones that I typically run, are the live streams on our social channels. That's where we're starting, like, what's the engagement are we getting? We're purposely doing ones with live Q&A, so how many responses are we getting? What we're finding right now is that the large amount of views we get after it's live, right? 90% of our views are coming after the fact. So that's entirely, talk about phases that we're going through. Right now, we're sitting there going, there's something there that we need to adjust for. And what other content can we start putting out here, knowing that we'll get the bulk of the responses after? And how do we follow back through on community to make sure we're responding to questions, we're still enabling those? How do we get them to our own communities at that point to ask questions? So really, the data is driving where our strategies are going, and it's driving innovation that I think is exciting our whole team.
Yeah, see, I love that point around like one of the big themes that, obviously we've talked about, Shelby and Carmen, we've done the same, which is this shift to virtual is really a content play, right? And how do you think about content differently? And it's not just the moment in time event itself. It's not just the promo of the event, but how do you repurpose that content in ways that's really, really important? I'd love to kind of open up if it's okay to kind of say, like, how are you thinking, Shelby, Carmen, Andrea, or Erica for that matter, like, how are you thinking about the content story and how you repurpose content in a way that is really tied to the overall marketing strategy?
Yeah, I can start. Obviously we want to see how we can reduce the work but get maximum impact. So how can we repurpose what we've been filming and slice it and dice it and put it in different places? What I'm most interested in right now is how do we create content specific, using that same piece specific for every channel we're using. Right now it's easy to cut clips from something and just put it out there. How do we add in the correct graphics, the correct engagement measures per channel, per place, per audience?
Yeah.
Same basic content to drive that emphasis of what we're trying to get for our objectives. And, that's where I'm excited on moving to. It just requires, more work from everyone. So we have to decide if it's really worth it or not.
Yeah, I can jump in for a second just to think about scale. So similar to Andrea, we have at Salesforce, we had hundreds of thousands of groups actually in over 93 countries. So getting content out at scale is a brilliant mechanism, but content's different when you're sending it out to be consumed virtually. And so doing things and thinking about like content that used to be presented live, but doing talk tracks and video, demo walkthroughs so that you can empower people to do their own events and do it in a way that they feel confident to do it. So it's not just pitching them content that was presented, but literally helping them understand how to walk through that content and taking that extra step. So when somebody is creating they're doing a live event and an SME or a subject matter expert's delivering it, but then in order to make that accessible to your community, having that subject matter expert detail out the steps to present it and then pitching that out to your distributed community it seems so small and it does take an extra step, but it's picking the right content to focus on that's going to have the deepest adoption.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Eric. No, I was just going to say that we've found something that was very interesting, and I don't know that we've ever thought of this before, but as we started opening the conversation in these events, we've seen that our product management team has been more and more interested in learning about the feedback that our users are giving, because at the end of the day, the community that we have are our end users of our platform. And when we open this communication channel, when we make it so much more easy for them to share their content and share their pain points and share whatever it is that they feel that we can improve on, it makes a difference that even some recorded sessions or some events that we've done that are dedicated to specific topics that I myself didn't know were a focus in our engineering and our product teams, they come and ask me for the recordings. They come and ask me if they can talk with specific community users that reached out during the event. So it's also very interesting to see the bridge that we connect.
That is amazing.
And we build with other teams.
Yeah, and you all have mentioned this, this idea that all of the lines have become so blurred in all of these different programs, which I think our hypothesis a few years ago about Bevy was that the future of marketing was really about community. And now, as Erica said at the beginning, like 2020, like sped all of that up by 3 or 4 years for, people in the community industry. Like, wow, like, where's everybody been? Now everybody's talking about it, which I guess then leads into, what does the future of virtual events look like? And I say this with, whenever I get this question, I say, well, I'll tell you what it looks like today, but like that might change in 2 weeks. And I think you all are representative of brands that made the shift where a lot of people didn't, honestly, and sort of hoping that things, would change or come back sooner than they appear to have. But you all made the shift. Let Carmen, maybe you could share first, and if somebody else wants to jump in and has a perspective, what does the future of events, virtual events look like?
Yeah. And as you just said, Derek, I think we're all sort of evolving what we think that look like and when we might come back to virtual events, to in-person events or hybrid events. So right now we are starting the year very much in the virtual space, and we are hoping to move towards hybrid gatherings by the end of the year. Obviously pending guidance from health and safety experts and government officials, but a lot of what we have been planning, just as somebody who works on production and program development, is focusing heavily on virtual now and making sure that our programs include flexibility to add on hybrid or smaller in-person components as well. So as you said, that it's changing and evolving. So to make sure we have some flexibility to adapt to that, but planning for heavy virtual, because I think even when we are back in the real world all together, this virtual component is not going to go away for a very long time. People are used to having access to events at home. And as we said, we can create such a larger and different, more robust community with virtual events. So I expect that'll be in play for a long time to come.
I just have to add on, I was always one of the only ones when I was at Salesforce. Dreamforce is wonderful. It's like the Lollapalooza of tech events, and it's so much fun, and it's learning, it's networking. But it always made me kind of sad because as a person who ran a global community, even though it shut down San Francisco and it was a huge amount of people, it was just such a small fraction of the world that didn't get to be a part of it. And so this was such an exciting opportunity where I was already thinking about how can we bring in this global community to experience it. So it's an exciting shift. And I love what you said, Carmen, that now everything you're going to do is thinking about that. So that every event that you now think about is how can I pull in this unbelievable global community to be a part of it, and not just like only who can get the thousands of dollars to fly to a specific location is the one that the blessed ones that get to experience this goodness. And so I love that concept of packaging this up and letting people experience it.
I think too, we're Startup Grind, which I'm a co-founder of. We have our 10,000 person conference happening as we speak this week. It's always been in person. As I've been reflecting on this, I think back to the days of us flying to these big conferences like Dreamforce or other conferences around the world. I don't know that people are going to 10,000 people are going to fly to Startup Grind in the future. I don't know that is coming back anytime soon or maybe ever. But I do I see very clearly that the hyper local, smaller groups, like drive in your city, 20, 30 minutes, like we all want to be outside, right?
Yes.
And so that's going to come back, I think, very, very strong. But if your program's not designed and ready to sort of have that type of flexibility, or you haven't been building that, that's probably something you want to start thinking about of like, how do I get hyper local fast? Because then I can have that flexibility of like, is it online? Is it offline? It depends on, as somebody said, what are the local requirements? What's the government saying we're allowed to do? But you have some control there versus like hosting these huge mega conferences where you don't know if the border's going to get shut. You don't know what TSA is going to do when you get there. I mean, that already happened before for big international conferences. Like we'd have people all the time like get stopped at the border and sent home, and had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was just the issues of that in general.
Well, we are getting some amazing questions from the audience, so I want to make sure we get to them. That's what we'll do next. But I think before we do that, just want to open it up to the panel if they have any kind of final thoughts, key takeaways, summary points that they really want to make sure they get out there up front. We'd love to give you the opportunity right now.
I'd just like to share something super funny, I think, that I read, which was in the future of hybrid events, people are going to spend more budget in AV than in F&B. So more budget in audiovisuals than in food and beverages. With the typical meetups with pizza and beer right now, you're more worried in having a good camera to really appear in these virtual events. And I think that that's something that we need to think about. Like right now, there are small events where you get Deliveroo sent home and you're eating in front of people in a Zoom call. And I think that if we look at the future of hybrid events, we're going to need to think of a very seamless experience where everyone that's sitting together in a room doesn't feel disconnected from the people that are online and vice versa. Because I work in a multinational team and I know that half of my team is abroad. And I remember when I was at the office in Lisbon and we were all together and there was a camera in the room, we were connected with other people around the world and there was just something missing there. So making sure that it's a seamless experience and no one feels left out in a way.
Great thought.
Great thought.
Yeah.
All right.
And to that point.
Yeah, please, Carmen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just all of our events, we always put our audience first. And I think that has really shown through the success of them. So just making sure that the events really stay true to your brand and mission and that you're making content that actually matters for your audience. That has been really important for us. And the power of good Wi-Fi for virtual events.
That's what we talk about all the time.
For sure.
Speaking of community first, because I think that's key to that point of like empathy, right? You know, what do your customers and users really need? I mean, let's start with this question from Naman Brown Andrea. This is for Andrea, I believe. Did you find it hard to get your community to engage in your networking events? Because Naman is struggling to encourage his or her community to come off the mic and ask questions.
Yes, definitely. And I think that especially if you look at different regions across the world, there are cultural differences that also add on top of people not wanting to expose themselves or unmute or show themselves in camera. So what we try to do is we really push our community leaders to set an example, basically. So we get into the events, everyone turns on the camera, everyone turns on their mic, and we just do 5-minute banter where we just talk about life. We just ask people where they're coming from. We ask them to talk on the chat. In terms of networking, in terms of breakout sessions, we've done either very big or very small. If you're doing very small, just make sure that you have a good moderator. Every community manager knows the importance of a good moderator. So make sure that the person that's controlling the room is really enticing and it's really taking control of the situation and knows exactly when and how people should come in. And when you're doing big ones, just make sure that you're making it interactive. So either it's a karaoke session that we've done, either it's a person that just wants to tell a story, either it's just sharing, I don't know, something that went wrong and it feels relatable for other people to just be open into sharing their own story. So I think that it's a matter of just testing and trying out.
Andrea, the mic is open for you if you want to sing right now.
Oh my God, please don't put me on the spot.
I have one other cool little tidbit that I heard, and I use it all the time now. I think it's so awesome, and I think it can be applied for community leaders or anyone, is that I learned very quickly in running a large community and then running a team that, you know, everybody is like me. I like to talk, I like to brainstorm, but not everybody has that personality. So even in person, people don't all interact the same way. So same thing online. So there's this cool trick that I learned where, you know, you ask a prompt and it's everybody, even here, we're interrupting each other and it's really awkward. And so instead you ask the prompt, have everybody go to the chat and don't press enter. Just put their answer or their thoughts. Don't press enter so they don't get, overwhelmed by someone's response. And then, you know, the moderator just says, okay, 1, 2, 3, everybody clicks send. And then you read through the interactions. Everybody has like a unique way to think about it and process it. And it's something so small, but it's something so nice to be able to try to pull out different people in a virtual world. Just a tiny tip.
Love it.
We there are so many great questions. I think we're going to extend the event maybe by 3 or 4 hours, so everybody just get comfortable to try to get through all this. We're not going to do that. Okay, so how Jacqueline and Piper both have kind of similar questions. How do you combat virtual burnout among your participants, and how do you overcome the overwhelm of Zoom? And I spoke with my parents literally like at 10 o'clock last night, and they were just like expressing this exact thing. We've all felt it, like overwhelmed, exhausted from being on Zoom all day. Selfishly, I'll say use Socialive and Bevy. These are good ways to not feel as exhausted at the end of days or end of events, because the experiences they're just, I don't know, there's something about being in Zoom that it's just the sensory overload that just like it makes us all exhausted. So, okay, who's got it? Who wants to jump in?
Sure, I can jump in a little. So we have been experimenting with different formats of events, which has been really helpful. We did an NYT cooking holiday cookie swap event that we hosted on Socialive, which was really fun. And it included a demo along with a conversation and kind of helped people get up and get inspired to get into the kitchen. We also hosted a original piece of theatrical journalism. It was a play called Finish the Fight. And we commissioned a director and a playwright to use New York Times source material to create this play celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And it was a totally different type of format and a way to engage our audience in a different way than just your standard faces on a screen.
Yeah, I can say from a B2B perspective, right? We webinar overload. That's where some of the live streaming on the social channels is helping us, in the sense of it's not quite as, you don't have, as a participant or a viewer, you're not required to be quite as involved, but we still have the chat Q&A available. So we're getting 30, 60 comments and questions in short sessions of these like technical demos, which don't really belong on LinkedIn necessarily, but they're performing well. Because, you know, they're there already. They were trying to avoid work. You feel kind of bad about it. So you go to LinkedIn because then it makes you feel like you're working. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that we're kind of eyeing is how do we take small pieces, make it easier to digest, smaller amount of time, and put it where people are already spending their time.
That's great. Another great question here from Gabby Lee. She specifically asked Carmen, obviously others can jump in, but would be great for you, Carmen, to share some of the pre-event audience engagement hacks, as they called it, the New York Times did. And one step further, what were the successes of that and what were any of the learnings/failures, if you will?
Yeah. Thank you, Gabby. I think that's a very good question for our marketing team, but I can say that some of the hacks that I was inspired by as someone on production, just the ways that we were soliciting questions and getting some of that user-generated content that could be repurposed in different ways throughout the show was really exciting. And then also when they did reach out to audience members to help participate and create the content, they also promoted marketing materials to that audience. So to leverage our audience to help spread the word some more, and said, we know you submitted a video response for this. Here are some kind of assets that you can tell people to look out for your segment in the show. And I thought that was really interesting and exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, you, Derek.
Yeah, here's another one we have is just what kinds of virtual networking activities do you recommend? And this is specifically for groups of developers or high percentage of introverts, as they put it.
Oh, so that's me, right? So we've done a lot of quizzes. We've done a lot of trivia. We try to use our app that we've built specifically for events where people just get in and join and are part of the event. And like I said, we've tried a couple of karaoke sessions. We've tried some just open conversations where we open breakout rooms and just talk about random things. Yeah, I think that there's no magic formula, but maybe try Bevy and Socialive without a doubt.
You guys are the best. So we've got a question here for Shelby from Lindsay Blodgett. Shelby, why did you decide to move to smaller events versus consistently, large events at scale? And what results are you beginning to see from that transition?
Yeah, I would say the biggest part of that is, the low-hanging fruit that we were talking about earlier about having community. So on those technical sides, we already have 75 user groups across the world, right? They are used to small physical events. When we made that initial shift and did Zoom meetings, right? It was like, oh no, we have to do something, put them on Zoom. We weren't really getting a lot of people responding. Again, they're tired of Zoom. And so what we noticed was we don't want to lose these groups. We don't want to, when by the time we can come back to physical events, what can we possibly do to keep them going? Because Zoom's not working. And so that's where we kind of started doing more live streaming. We started, we don't do 75 individual ones. We kind of lump them together, but we do target them specifically to have them opportunities as the hosts. We spread the content through, invite them one-offs as we can. And the goal of that is to bring it virtual, still be building that community, still be trying to drive people to follow those groups so that when we can get back to in-person, again, like Derek said, they're smaller groups. So we'll be able to meet. It's not like the large conferences. And we'll be able to continue to grow that community who at this point will have loyalty towards us, which I think is the important piece.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, I just want to say one thing. We had a question of somebody who asked why all the panelists are women, and as somebody that's done event for 10 years, I just wanted to say that it's about time we had panels with just all women.
I agree.
And
get rid of us.
You all, this is one of the most interesting panels I've ever attended, and I've been to way more than events than any human being should ever attend. So, and literally we could go for another 2 or 3 hours with the content that we have with just this group of people. So I learned a lot. I'm so grateful to have been part of it. The Socialive team, for Kylie and David and their whole team, and Marcia and our team for putting this all together. And hopefully we've got our teams in the booths if you want to stick around and meet and chat and hang out with either of our teams. We'd love to get to know you and meet you. And but so grateful for you all. And just like, there's so much wealth of information here. I need more. I need to rewatch it. So I'm gonna, when it gets online, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, and we will be the long form video will obviously be available on Bevy, but we'll be creating some short snackable segments to share after the fact as well. Do we have time for one short question, or are we at the end now? What do you say?
If you've got one, do it. If you got a good one, go for it.
I don't know that I have one. Let me see if there's one in here. That's I do like this one. This is fun. Let's end with this. What entertainment aspects have you been incorporating, like live events, comedy, rap, anything that you guys can talk about? That'd be fun. Magicians, I like that.
There's a lot of DJs in events these days.
Yeah.
I'm loving. I'll jump in. I'm loving this this concept of, like, there's a lot of goodness to these hyper local and food parties that you bring, and so now they're bringing them online where you're shipping out food or wine and doing like sommelier, bring a sommelier, do the wine tasting. Like, this feels really intimate and really fun. So I've loved doing chocolate parties and cheese pairings, and those things are a lot of fun. So that's like a loose way to do networking that doesn't feel stilted.
Yeah, you're most likely going to talk more after you have a couple glasses of wine.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Anyone else want to add to that before we wrap up?
I can share something. Sorry, go ahead, Carmen.
Yeah, so we've been including music and books in some of our events. So we have an offstage series that celebrates theater, and that usually includes some musical numbers that are included throughout, which is a fun way to break it up a little bit. And then also right now we're hosting a book club series, which can also help with the digital fatigue because people are doing something that's not looking at a screen to prepare for the events as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for one of our corporate events, we did a magic show. which was a bit intense. But also I've seen a lot of big conferences that have these random moments where you just look at little puppies or like carrots or like people just baking, and it's just 5 minutes of your time where you just disconnect from the event before going back into all the sessions. So I thought, just why not go random?
Yeah, I need more puppies in my events.
I'm definitely not that cool. So I've got 3 kids. I'm like in for the event and out. So I have not participated in those.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, again, I just want to echo what Derek said and thank this amazing group of women, these panelists who are absolutely incredible. Carmen, Shelby, Erica, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom. I think the audience got a lot. And I know Derek wants to also mention another upcoming event that Bevy has.
Yeah, we've got we've got an event coming on March 16th. So we'll let you all know about that. And hopefully we can do this again with Socialive. I mean, bringing together so many of their amazing partners and bringing together some of our amazing partners and sort of sharing the learnings there has been really, again, insightful for me. And I learned a lot. So hopefully we can make this a more regular thing.
Agreed. Well, thanks. And hopefully we'll see you after the show in the booths.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
everyone.